Okay, so now we are at step 8D, right? Learn about parts 3, 4, and 5 using video lecture and written instructions. As you can see, I have titled this part Reasoning from the Extremes. I will fix that by the time you get to it to come up with a picture of a virtuous COVID-19 nurse. Now at this point you might be wondering what exactly does that mean? I'm not sure I understand. Well, the point of the videos for step 8D is to help coach you through your understanding of what it means to reason from the extremes. Recall that I already did a lecture that said something about reasoning from the extremes, so keep that in mind. What I have titled Step 8D for this assignment goes with this lecture as well. Now, of course, remember, I'm using courtesy, rudeness, and sycophancy as my example to demonstrate what it is you need to do in paragraphs 3, 4, and 5. Remember, you were supposed to copy this and have cowardice, courage, and foolhardiness here with respect to what you will be focusing on. Okay, so that said, I'm going to go ahead and read through this, and then I'm going to tell you about the big picture, and then we're going to move on to focus on the first two bullets and how you get those done according to specific requirements and standards that I have listed out in this document, and that I will provide further information on and examples accordingly. Okay, so parts 3, 4, and 5 are where you do your moral theory application, as you know from looking at the outline from step 2 of this assignment. So here you just get more detail than is provided in the initial outline in step 2, where you got the big picture of what it is that you would be doing for this essay. And each part basically has the same move. Making these moves are part of what we might call an Aristotelian method for figuring out what it means to be virtuous in a particular situation for a particular person. Think back to the lecture video you may have watched or what you might have read. To think back, we're going to be using reasoning from the extremes to figure out what the virtuous person would do if they were doing the right thing in the right way at the right time with the right feelings, with the right attitudes. And of course, we're using the COVID-19 nurses during the height of the pandemic as our practical application. So again, the bullets for each part of the paragraph lay out the method or a method that you can use to show that you are philosophically, from the standpoint of Aristotle's virtue ethics, applying his method, applying his theory. So reasoning from the extremes, that's what the outline for each part has you doing. I broke down what it means to reason from the extremes. Now, as I might have mentioned in another video, you're definitely going to have to define concepts and then you'll use concepts. But let's take a look at the specifics. So we have in part 3, introductory sentence about applying Aristotle's concept of a vice and an extreme. Notice that I tell you which character trait to focus on in doing so. I say that you have to have 2 fully cited definitions for cowardice. So going to your diagram, right? If I say I want you to focus on cowardice and it's an extreme, you should add in your topic sentence that you'll be focusing on an extreme of what? Deficiency or excess? Where do you have cowardice in this diagram? All right, so continuing on. Then you have carefully and directly make use of significance or word or phrases in the definitions that you cite to convince me how a nurse might have or did reflect cowardice during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll get more into this in a separate video. Okay, so part 4, same kind of moves, slightly different focus. Introductory sentence about applying Aristotle's concept of another vice and another extreme. So then that's how you start off, and then 2 fully cited definitions for foolhardiness. 1 sentence per definition. I didn't state that up here, but I will add that up here and talk more about that in a video, either this one or one that is coming up. So if I tell you to focus in part 4 on the character trait of foolhardiness, and I tell you it's a vice and another extreme, a detail that you might want to add in your topic sentence is that it's an extreme of what? Where do you have foolhardiness in your diagram for this? Is foolhardiness an extreme of deficiency or an extreme of excess? So one thing that I always push you guys to do or to reflect, as you know from the grading rubrics, is to be precise, to be exact, to be detailed. Okay, so then again, you're going to so you have your introductory sentence, you have 2 cited definitions for a particular character trait. And then this is where, this is kind of more like, this is kind of a more basic kind of thing to do with your mind. This is pretty basic. It's low level. You're going and you're finding definitions, but I do have specific requirements and conditions for the definition. So you can't just go and find any definition for a given word. I actually have rules and requirements, and we'll go over that in another video. Then you carefully and directly make use of significant words and phrases in the definitions to convince me how a nurse might have reflected foolhardiness during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So as you can see, I'm first having you define an extreme in terms of cowardice to see what it might look like for a nurse to reflect that character trait. Then I have you define another character trait, foolhardiness, another extreme, and then to talk about what a nurse might reflect in doing so. So again, this outline corresponds with this. We're focusing on an extreme, defining the character trait, and then applying it, at least hypothetically, to a COVID-19 nurse. Then we're going to this extreme with foolhardiness, defining it, and then explaining how a nurse might reflect foolhardiness, and then supposedly in reasoning from the extremes in those paragraphs, parts 3 and 4 and 5, it helps us to get to a balance. Okay, so, and oh, by the way, if I have not told you this, you should have added balance between what? Two extremes. And that brings us to our part 5. Or, in theory, your what? 5th paragraph. Of course, some of you might have 2 paragraphs for a given part. So again, same moves. Why do I have these moves for every paragraph? Because I want you to apply a method, and I'm breaking down the method for you. Introductory sentence about applying Aristotle's concept of a virtue and a balance. And of course, that you would add the detail. 2 fully cited definitions for courage, 1 sentence per definition. We'll go more into that. And then again, as with the other 2 character traits, the other parts of the essay, carefully and directly make use of significant words and phrases in the definitions to convince me how a nurse might have reflected courage during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. And hopefully I catch that before you get to this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do another video. And in the next video, we're going to focus on constructing this part and this part for each paragraph.